your PS recently attacked a fundraiser that was hosted in my event that Pam Demoff just referred to. It was called Guns and Guinness, and it was a group of responsible individuals who got together and did a clay shootout and then drove 20 minutes away after responsibly putting away their firearms and had a barbecue. And at this barbecue, there was alcohol. Now, Minister, my question is this. You commented in the House just recently, you said this with regards to respecting individual autonomy and decision-making. You said, before I was 25, I was married. I was the father of 2 kids by then. I owned a house. I had a mortgage. I was a cop. I carried a gun. I was entrusted with all the powers of a police officer, including the authority to restrict a person's liberty and to use force, perhaps even deadly force. I could buy a drink and I could smoke a cigarette. That was how I was trusted, end quote. Minister, in this statement, in one breath, you associate maturity and therefore the ability to make autonomous decisions with drinking, using a gun, and applying deadly force. Minister, to use your words, is that not irresponsible to associate those 3 things in one statement in the House of Commons on Parliament Hill?
Ms. Harder, congratulations. That's a remarkable stretch of credibility and logic.
Did you not state this?
Yeah, what I was talking about is
because
frankly,
you're associating these 3
question.
Things with being mature to make an autonomous decision.
It's what I was explaining is what the authorities and responsibilities we give to adults, and acknowledging that adults have these authorities. And in fact, those were some of the authorities. And it was, quite frankly, in response to a suggestion that was coming from someone else, suggesting that people at the age of 25
So it's not irresponsible to legally use a firearm then?
I'm sorry? I was a police officer, ma'am. And the only time I've ever carried a firearm
So
is
I think, Minister, you would agree with me then, if an individual lawfully owns a firearm and lawfully uses a firearm, they have the right to do so, correct? And that would be a responsible thing to do, would it not?
I think it's important for everyone who lawfully possesses a firearm to do, first of all, to acquire it legally and have all the licenses and permits, training that is required. To store it securely so that it doesn't end up in the hands of someone who might commit a violent crime with it.
Absolutely.
To use it responsibly. And for example, for handguns, that would involve usually target shooting at a range. And when it comes time to dispose it, that they would do so according to the law and regulations to ensure that that firearm does not end up in the hands of someone that it shouldn't end up in. And that's how I would define responsible firearm ownership.
And I have no problem agreeing with you on that, Minister. Now, 9% of guns used in crimes were traced back to legal owners. Only 9% were traced back to legal owners. But Minister, you're under this this instruction from the Prime Minister to basically seize all handguns from Canadians. Now, here's the thing. If only 9% of those handguns belong to people who have properly registered, I'm just wondering how you're planning to get that other 89%. Will you just go knocking on every single Canadian door and search and seize every single house across this country in order to get those handguns that are not registered? Or how do you plan on taking those handguns off of the streets? Because, Minister, my point is this. People in this country, the large majority of them, responsibly own their handgun and responsibly use their handgun. Only 9% of firearms that are used in a crime are traced back to someone who has a registered firearm. So, Minister, it is going to be relatively impossible to get those illegal firearms off the street by legislating them. Don't you agree?
First of all, let me disagree with some of the things you said. I've not been tasked with seizing people's handguns. I was tasked with conducting an examination. Ms. Harder, we're not afraid of examining the facts and listening to all points of view. The evidence and the experience.
You are when you host consultations that are by invite only.
And so we're doing
That's
that.
not exactly public, is it?
And Ms. Harder, I would also tell you that I appreciate that the data is incomplete, but I can tell you about a complete sample of data, which is the data that was collected during my tenure as the Chief of Detectives and then the Chief of Police in Toronto. Because during that period of time, we traced the origins of all crime guns in that jurisdiction. And during my tenure, 30% of the guns that we seized that were crime guns used in criminal offense came from domestic sources, 70% were determined to have been smuggled across the border. Now, there is additional
Minister,
data.
I
I've
think you've
spoken
proved
to
my
chiefs of police
point.
in other
I
jurisdictions.
think you've proved my point. You're going after law-abiding gun owners, Minister. You're going after law-abiding gun
Merci,
owners. Go
merci.
after criminals. Do
Merci,
your job.
Madame Harder. Merci, Monsieur le ministre. Merci tout le monde. Merci.